All right, it's week 3 of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. That's the name of this podcast. I almost messed that up. This was a big weekend. I think most of the NCHC played, other than Miami. I think Miami had the week off, and everybody was playing in actual series instead of some series, some exhibitions. So I think it was good to get back in the flow of things and have actual hockey being played. And before we get too much into it, I do want to say that it was extremely nice being back at Lawson with the rest of the Lawson Lunatics, getting to watch Western Michigan play. And it had literally been 19 months since the last time I was in that building watching that team play. Like, I remember the last day of the season when they were debating on whether or not they were going to keep doing games, or if it was going to be games and no fans, or what was going to happen back in 2020, and then to go the entire season without being able to go. So it was I think that's as close as I'm ever going to get to feeling like my very first game at Lawson again.
I can't imagine the crowd pop when the team just came out for warm-ups, and then especially when they scored their first goal, that it must have just been electric.
I know I missed the beginning of the game because I was still at work, but when that first goal hit the back of the net, everybody, it was just like the cap came off. Like, it was so loud. It was so instantaneous. I think the crowd knew that the goal was scored before the refs did. And it was just the best atmosphere. And I love every time I get to go to that stadium, every time I get to watch Western play, and every time Western wins. Like, it's the best. So I guess let's get into it. And obviously Western won Friday. They ended up going on to sweep Ferris State, taking one here in Kalamazoo and one there in Ferris. Big weekend for the boys. At least 9 Broncos had at least 1 point on the weekend, with 8 having 2 or more. And I think when you get that kind of production spread across your team, it's going to be a hard team to beat. Downside was they took quite a few penalties on the weekend. We had 8 on the weekend. Good news is the PK was able to step up and not allow any power play goals. But that's a lot of pressure to put on a goalie at any level. And especially when you're looking at teams like North Dakotas and Minnesota Duluths and St. Clouds, like, you can't allow that many opportunities to be undermanned. Like, it's going to come back and bite you. No matter how good your penalty kill is, eventually someone's going to score on you. And our power play was 2 for 11, which, not terrible. I think those 2 goals came in Friday's game, so we didn't get any in Saturday's game. But again, you want to see that number kind of go up and bring those penalties down and balance that out a little bit better that way. It was also a weekend of firsts. Pat Ferschweiler got his first win behind the bench of the Broncos on Friday night. And surprisingly, as a junior, Bussy's finally got his first shutout in a Broncos uniform.
Really?
Which, I mean, considering he didn't play most of last year, I think he played 3 games total, but it was rather surprising that was his first goose egg. I mean, he's a solid goaltender, but he does tend to give up a couple here and there, so. Also, the Broncos had a player earn a Player of the Week award in Ethan Frank, who led all of the Broncos with 5 points on the weekend, 3 goals and 2 assists. And, I mean, you want that kind of production out of your upperclassmen and your most experienced players, so not really a surprise that he was able to put those kind of points on the board, but definitely a benefit when your top players are playing well. I think that covers pretty much the recap for Western's weekend. Warren gets an honorable mention for having 4 points, was the second highest Bronco point getter. He had 3 assists and a goal. So definitely spreading it around. And like I said, there were 8 guys total who had 2 or more points. So definitely like seeing that production coming from the majority of the team and not just one group of guys or one line or things like that. So, well-balanced team so far.
And that is definitely who is a solid team, and the amount of points that Western was able to put up. It's a little bit surprising because they're a solid middle of the pack team.
Yeah.
UMD, they're coming off a sweep of Bemidji State, and I will apologize to the Beavers fans. Last week after the North Dakota exhibition, I kind of didn't give Bemidji enough credit, and I completely forgot that they made the NCAA tournament last year. All 5 Minnesota teams made it, and so my apologies to any Bemidji State fans that happened to stumble across this. I did not give your team enough credit. I wasn't able to watch either of the 2 games, but I was able to listen to them, and it sounded like it was a very grinded out type of series. UMD was able to win 4-2 and then 2-1, and it took a lot of the veteran guys. Kobe Roth, Blake Biondi, Luke Lohite, Noah Cates, Quinn Olson, Kobe Bender, they all scored, and UMD had 4 players with 2 points, goal and assist each. And then the power play, that was key. 4 power plays each, but scored 1 each night and go on the power play. That's great. And then we were able to hold to Bemidji to 4 power play shots both nights. So that was also a positive. Shots on goal, Bemidji outshot us both nights, 30-20 and then 29-16. Both teams each played 1 goalie each night. So Stay Skull played Friday night for UMD, and then Fanti played Saturday night. But they kept it solid, 3 goals among 2 goaltenders, and Bemidji State's goaltending 4-2. That's still solid against one of the top teams in the nation, number 5, as it is. So I think overall, pretty best.
Yeah. Do you think Minnesota's going to try and run those 2 goalies most of the year? Or do you think they're going to establish a true number 1 and then kind of use the other guy when they need to, if they need to, type of thing?
I think we're going to use both throughout the year. That was the plan last year. And it's a little different for Sandlin's teams because normally what he's done is had 1 goalie per year, and unless they're injured, like in the hospital, you're not going to play your backup. But both Fanti and Stayskull proved last year that they can play the number 1 role. So I think he's going to even it out, and it not necessarily say, okay, Zach, you're playing on Friday, Ryan, you're playing on Saturday. It's just going to go off of matchups. Maybe Stayskull will get Saturday and then the following Friday, or one weekend one is super hot, might as well go for it. I don't think they're going to try and establish a true number 1 though, and they're so even in their play when you watch them that it is tough to say that one is a runaway goal. It's NHL comparison. It's Leonard and Fleury for the Knights last year. They're so even. You can't really designate a number 1. It's 1 and 1A. So I think that's the way they're going to move forward throughout the season.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of a nice thing to have 2 solid goaltenders and not have to kind of bring somebody in colder who hasn't seen a lot of live action. Actually, I think overall it was a really solid week for the NCHC as a whole. Western swept, UMD swept, Denver swept, North Dakota swept.
Yep.
Uh, Omaha, I think, also swept.
They did sweep, yeah.
And then St. Cloud split, and Colorado lost and tied, I believe. So the only struggler was Colorado, which I think most people who follow the NCHC kind of knew was coming, but you still want to see like everybody in the conference do well when it's out of conference hockey. It just makes the conference as a whole look a little bit beefier. Um,
Yeah.
Arizona, I did see some highlights of Arizona and Denver, and a lot of the time Arizona just looked like they were out of position, and I think there was a little bit higher expectation that we were going to see better play. And again, it is kind of early in the year, but coming, I think maybe might have expected a little bit cleaner game from them in certain regards. And like I said, a lot of the plays they just looked like they were chasing the puck a little too much, couldn't establish good positioning in the defensive zone, and it led to some Denver goals.
And that's the note that I had for myself looking at the scores was Denver sweeping them by the scores of 8-3 and then 4-3. It was a little bit of a surprise based off of what ASU has been the last couple of years. Um, don't expect Denver to be that strong this year. So especially the 8-3 score, that that kind of raised my eyebrows because Arizona State, they're not that. No offense to St. Thomas, but they're no St. Thomas, a new team in the league that's just learning it. They've been in a couple years to Division One hockey. They've had some success, and for a team like Denver, who's kind of in the middle of the pack in the NCHC, to put up 8 on them was like, wait a minute here, what's going on, ASU?
Yeah,
What's happening here?
yeah, and I mean to talk about this conference in week 2. Let's call it week 1.5, really. Um, just because not everybody played an actual series last week, but you already had a top 5 matchup on the weekend with St. Cloud and Minnesota State, and to watch those two teams, that's a heavyweight matchup any time of the year, and to get it so early in the year and for both teams to pick up a win speaks highly for both teams, I think. And I think it says a lot about St. Cloud getting off to a pretty quick start, 3-1 on the year so far. Looking to definitely make some noise both in the NCHC and the CCA as NCAA as a whole.
The funny part about that series is normally in a home and home, if they're going to split, you expect the home team to win each game. That wasn't the case in this series. Mankato went up to St. Cloud and beat them 1-0 in their barn, and St. Cloud said, "You know what? Enough of this. We're gonna turn around." And they were up 3-0 in Mankato, and Mankato was able to scrape one across, but it just wasn't enough. And that just shows the fortitude of these two teams in general, where it doesn't matter if they're at home or away, they're going to play you tough, and they're going to win. They don't go in expecting that's going to be a tough game. They go in expecting we're winning this game and we're going to beat you into the ice if at all possible.
Yeah, Western had some. I think this was a really good weekend for Western. They got their first regular season game was at home in front of the Lunatics, who'd been, kind of itching and waiting to get in that building and watch the team play. And they had a pretty easy night. I mean, not easy night because Ferris is by no means a cakewalk, but you get a win, you get a shutout, you feel good about the night. It makes that bus ride up north a little bit easier to take. And then you get up north and you face a little bit of adversity. Ferris came out strong, came out and said, hey, we're not going to be pushed around. Was up 2-0 pretty early in the game. Western had to fight back, get it to 2-2 by the third period. Ferris scores again. It's kind of back and forth game a little bit. Western catches up and Ferris seems to pull away, and you're kind of thinking, oh, okay, this is going to be one of those games where we're just going to get close and not quite get over the hump. But yet, Western finds the last goal, or scores their last 2 goals within a minute or so of each other, quick goals, and ends up picking up the win. So they got a little bit of adversity under a new coach, Their senior players know how to play. And again, it was, Ethan Frank got us tied the game at 2 for us. And then Cole Gallant got us tied back at 3. And I think it was Josh Polin. I can't remember his first name, but I know his last name's Polin. I believe had the game winner on Saturday. It was kind of hard to follow between Twitter and the radio, switching back and forth depending on whether I was in the car or not. So, excuse me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how it went. And anytime you can get adversity early in the season and it can be a building block for your team, I think is a good thing. And with not an inexperienced coaching staff, but a new head coach. And I think there's different levels of coaching, and head coach is one of those ones that it takes some time getting used to the role and understanding the role. And so to get to meet that first road or speed bump and come out on the other side with a win, I think speaks highly of where this team can go and the leadership on and off the ice.
And I think, as we talked about in the first podcast, Western is one of those older teams. They have players that have been there before. And yeah, if you start hitting a little adversity, you're going to lean on those older players who have been there before, and they can be like, hey, this is fine. We can move forward. And I think that's what UMD ran into a little bit. So we had the exact opposite. We were at Bemidji on Friday, and then we came back to UMD for Saturday. And Amsoil, as I was listening to even the pregame driving, the student section was just filled. It was a sold-out student section. They were ready to go. Ended up being 0-0 after 1, just like Friday night. And I think there was a little anxiety and a little bit of pressure that the players were putting on themselves because of not playing in front of their home fans for 19 months. They wanted to, you win 4-2 on Friday night, you want to put on a good show in front of your home fans, and they struggled a little bit. But that's where the senior and upperclassmen leadership came through. All the guys that scored, they're guys that have been there before. And so Kobe Bender getting the empty netter on Saturday, that was just upperclassmen leadership saying, hey, all right, that's fine. We've been here before. Let's go do this. Let's finish it. Go ahead and move on to next weekend, which should be fun. But I know we will talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. And then I don't know about UND quite yet. And I know they swept Niagara. I don't know much about Niagara. I think I've maybe seen them once at Western one time. I don't even know what conference they're in, honestly.
They are in Atlantic Hockey,
which is a solid conference in itself. But I don't know if this is a telltale series to let us know how good UND is. I think it can show that they have promise, that they have potential to be good. And it's good experience for their younger team, which, as I think we talked about in the first episode, that like half their team is new to UND. So to have a weekend like this after a strong exhibition game, I think speaks highly of that program's ability to rebuild or reload or retool, or however you want to phrase it, whatever happy word you like there. But I want to see their level of competition come up and see how they handle competition that's on par with their level, or the NCHC level, or somewhere in there, before I clearly say that this team is as good as other UND teams.
Yeah, and in looking at those scores, I mean, not to take anything away from Atlantic Hockey, but they're not necessarily known for being a powerhouse. And I had the same thoughts as you. an NCHC team should beat Niagara the way that UND won with 6-2 and 4-0. That's my opinion, but unless it's the top team in Atlantic hockey, an NCHC team should beat them like that. Maybe Colorado College, not so much. But I would like North Dakota. I don't know what their schedule is coming up, but them to play a, a better conference, a team from a better conference. Because looking over the games this weekend, the NCHC played 3 CCHA teams, 1 Atlantic, 1 Independent, 1 Hockey East, and 1 ECAC team. So it was kind of a variety. But yeah, North Dakota, in order to make a judgment on them, they need to play somebody a little better than Niagara.
And I think they'll get that test this weekend. It looks like they have Bemidji State, who's currently number 20 or was receiving votes at number 20. It's kind of hard to figure out their schedule, but they will have Bemidji State in a home and home series. So they'll be at Bemidji on Friday and they'll be home on Saturday.
I think that should be a little bit interesting just because they did play the exhibition game against each other. And that was 2-1. Them pitting top against top instead of just kind of throwing guys out there, see what they're doing preseason game. It should be a little more interesting than that. And if that preseason or that exhibition game was 2-1, these games might go to overtime, both of them. And Bemidji being the closest of the Minnesota schools to North Dakota, Friday night's probably going to be pretty amped up in Bemidji with those students.
Let's see. Let's move on to Players of the Week. And for this week, we already talked about Ethan Frank was the forward of the week, collecting 5 points on the weekend, 3 goals, 2 assists. And I don't know if you saw, I think it was his first goal Friday night. That stretch pass that he looked like freaking Jerry Rice out there, snagging it, dropping it, and putting it above the glove on the goalie. Like, it was dirty. Beautiful play. Beautiful play. And then his second goal came later. I think it actually came in the third period on a power play, and he just ripped it from the faceoff. That goalie had no chance. Beautiful pass on the power play. And all that working towards getting Ethan his first award of the weekly award of the year. And then the defenseman of the week was Jake Sanderson. I don't know how to read. Sanderson from UND. Finished the weekend with 2 goals, 2 assists.
Goalie of the week was Rennick from St. Cloud. They're number 1, solid number 1. And then there was co-rookies of the week, which is Massino Rizzo from Denver, and then Jake Schmaltz from North Dakota.
And this is not a crack at Rizzo, but anyone who's played NHL for any of the years can finally say they know of a player from actually Burnaby. Because I believe that is like the first city that it makes your team from if you're playing EASHL. And you're like, I don't know where this is, and I've never heard of anyone being from there. Well, I can officially say I know of someone from that town now. And yep, then Jake Schmaltz, who I believe has strong family ties to UND, so he's contributing strong to that family line that plays there. Here's a question, though. And looking at some of these, I do think, and this might sound homerish, I agree with Ethan being the forward of the week. I don't know that I 100% agree with St. Cloud's goalie being the goaltender of the week, and I have a few arguments. My top 3 goalies of the week were St. Cloud's goalie based on save percentage, the number of shots he did see, taking into effect his opponent in St. Cloud State being a ranked opponent. He did turn away 50 of 52 shots on net, which is a 9.6 save percentage. And he did allow 2 goals on the weekend, which gave him a goals against of 1. So very solid numbers. But he lost a game and he won a game. And when you have as many sweeps as you had within the conference, granted, it's a top opponent. That's the one flaw I have that makes him not my number 1 goalie of the weekend. And then you kind of look at the other 2 that I would put in the top 3 for the weekend are Brandon Bussey and I'm going to say his name wrong. The UND goalie, Zach Driscoll. Actually, I think this.
Yep, that's correct.
Both of these guys put up shutouts on the weekend, or at least one shutout on the weekend. Both of them swept. Both of them have above 90% save percentage. Bussey's at 9.3, and Zach's at 94. Zach has a goals against average of 1. And Bussey's was at 1.5. Bussey's had faced 44 shots, saving 41 of them. Zach faced 38 shots, saving 36. So a little bit less shots on goal taken. A little bit lower save percentages because of that. Both had 2 wins. And so between those 2, it really came down to the opponent. And I think Ferris is a higher grade opponent than Niagara was. I think it was a tougher test. And I think to pull not only a shutout, but to also win in their barn with, their student section is directly behind you for 2 out of the 3 periods. To me, I think was a little bit better of a performance, even though some of the numbers might have been a little bit lower. And you can say it's a homer pick, but I think based on the way I looked at the numbers, the performances, and saw Bussey's play on Friday, I think he would actually be my goalie of the week.
And I will disagree with you based off of Driscoll playing Niagara. I'm just throwing that one out just because you should win. And Rennick, yeah, he went 1-1, but the game he lost, it was 1-0. If you give up 1 goal on a team like St. Cloud, you should be able to win 95% of your games. You might run into a hot goalie every once in a while, but a 1-0 loss, I'm not going to hold it against them. And to now the number 1 team in the country in Mankato. And I've seen him play now for a couple of years, Rennick, and he is just that solid, where I don't know. Driscoll has played for UND, and Bussey we don't know what he is right now, for sure, because he hasn't played in a year. So, yes, he had a solid performance against Ferris State, who is a decent team and could challenge for an at-large bid in the CCHA. I don't think they will be the automatic unless they get a little bit lucky, which is definitely possible. We saw that last year with Mankato losing in the championship game. But I just don't know how you go against Rennick in playing the number 1 team in the country and giving up the 2 goals that he did, and losing 1-0 and then winning 3-1.
I'm not trying to take anything away from his performance on the weekend. I think he had a solid weekend, but I think at the end of the day, if everybody were at 2 games apiece, he's unfortunately their team's not the number 1 team in the conference or in any kind of standings because they did lose a game, and it is kind of the downside of being a goalie. You have to hope and pray that your team picks you up when you've carried the majority of the load for the entire night. So,
Mm-hmm.
those were just kind of the things like I looked at. Like, had there been other splits or a team didn't pick up sweeps and shutouts, then I would say that Rennick was probably the clear runaway. But when you have so many sweeps across the conference, it's hard for me to say that I can give it to somebody with an L on their record. And granted, maybe not all L's should be counted equally, which is why I did kind of take into account it was a top team in the country, but you're also supposed to be a top team in the country, and I would probably finish it Bussey's, Rennick, Driscoll, because I don't know much about Niagara and I don't know how solid they count. And then you throw in Denver's goalie, who, while he didn't pitch a shutout, did sweep a decent Arizona team. So
yeah, and it, for me, it does come down to opponent. And yes, St. Cloud they're the number 2 team, but it's basically any sport. That's why we have the best of 7 series. You get the top teams. If the Lightning sweep, it's last year in the Cup. Did they sweep? I thought they lost one. I might be wrong.
I believe they lost one. I believe they won it in 5.
It's you get the top team, and so the Lightning sweep. It's kind of a rarity that in a championship series that the best team sweeps somebody. There's a reason they're the best too, and there's a better chance that they're going to beat each other rather than split rather than one sweeps the other.
Yeah.
And so that would be my argument against that. The other players of the week, Sanderson and Schmaltz then as the rookie. My notes were, is it really worth it against Niagara? And defensively, I know this is always the argument with like the Norris Trophy. They go for who puts up the most points. I think it's a combination between points and defense and who did the best overall. And North Dakota giving up goals to Niagara, I just wouldn't put that there. And then I haven't seen Jake Schmaltz play. I know his brother was a stud for North Dakota. But again, it's Niagara. How good are they? And then how much of it was, he's got some stats, but how much of it is the name recognition? At least in my opinion, it's Schmaltz. He's great, North Dakota. But I don't want to say that's part of it because I haven't seen him play, and the kid could be talented as all get out. I really don't know. So I don't. That was just a thought that came to my head, but I don't want to make any judgments until I actually watch him play UMD or St. Cloud or an actual decent team other than Niagara.
Right. And then I think if we want to, we can move on to plays of the week. I think we both watched the video on I think it's NCHC TV has that one. If not, or if you want to watch it, then we can talk about it. There was one play on there one play that wasn't on there that I wish was on there because I would love to see a second view of this goal or this play because it was ridiculous. And it was late, or maybe not late in the third period, but it was in the third period. Western had gotten a power play, or was on the power play, and the Bulldogs were able to clear the zone, and they were headed back on a shorthand opportunity. Bussey somehow clears the net is away from the net, and Ronnie Addard, who's not like 100% known for his defensive play, but is still a strong defender. He's a little bit more of an offensive defenseman, likes to jump up in the rush. Made a spectacular play to cover up the goal line, to keep the net clear of the puck, and to keep the shutout in hand, and really kind of had Buzzy's back in that play. And it was a play that I wish I could see again. One, to make sure that it was Ronnie Addard that made the play, because I was 200 feet some the other direction and I couldn't see it clearly enough. But if I did see it right, it was Ronnie Addard, and it was an incredible play. And while it wasn't a goal or a save by a goalie, I think it deserves to be seen and to talk about for sure.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up here and trying to get to it. I'm watching the top plays. That's the one part of this that I didn't get to watching and seeing the top plays. So I will get to it eventually. Right now I'm on number 4 and watching Kobe Roth make one heck of a defensive play, getting back on the back check, defending a breakaway, diving to sweep the puck away from the Minji State player.
I'll tell you, their goalie also did an incredible job not getting out of the way and not getting his ankles taken out on that one.
Yes, he did. And, I'm not quite sure which one it is, but I think we know enough now. Here's the Ethan Frank highlight at number 2 play of the week.
It was so good.
Thanks. Thanks. Let me just go top Chad, bar down, right 90.
It was beautiful. So good.
That actually was not a play of the week. The one you're talking about defensively on
No.
NCHC.
Yeah, and I wish it were like legit. There's nowhere that I have seen this play other than seeing it live. Maybe if somebody has the NCHC subscription and they can go back and watch the game, they might be able to see the play that I'm talking about. It was incredible. The heads up play of Ronnie Addard to be aware. Unfortunately, it did also lead to a Western penalty. So it shortened our penalty or our power play, but just the fact that he was that heads up and got back and covered the net. So really good play, really solid play, and it just shows the team effort that this team, will eat shots for their goalie. They'll cover when he's away from the net for whatever reason. Just smart heads up team hockey. Let's take a little trip to the future now and see what's ahead for our favorite teams. Western is actually off this week, so hopefully they will watch a little film on their next opponent, who will be University of Michigan on the 22nd and 23rd in another home-and-home series. They will be in Ann Arbor that Friday and at home at Lawson that Saturday.
And they actually should get a pretty good look at Michigan if they can get the games on there, because Michigan will be traveling to Duluth next weekend for the icebreaker tournament that was supposed to happen last year, but this little friend called COVID that showed up and decided to crash the party. So it'll be UMD versus Michigan, and then Providence versus Mankato, both semifinal games, and then, of course, winners play winners and losers play losers for that tournament, both Friday and Saturday at Amsoil. And I did do a little bit of research on what the other two opponents have done with Providence and Michigan, because I don't know a whole lot about them. I did know Mankato played St. Cloud this week, and I believe they had an exhibition game. But I basically know what Mankato is and what they have been for the past few years. But Michigan is 2-0, and they swept Lake Superior State 7-4 and 6-1. They did lose to UNO in an exhibition game. So depending on Lake Superior and depending on what happens this weekend, that can tell us a decent amount about UNO on where they stand. And then Providence, they are 3-0. They've played 3 one-off games. So they beat Army 7-0. They beat Merrimack 5-2, and then American International 5-1. So it'll be UMD Michigan, then Providence Mankato. And I'm a little interested to see the Providence well, actually, both these matchups, just because Providence can produce very good hockey teams. We've known this from recent years.
Yeah, they're not too far removed from a national title.
Right. I think they're about 4 years, maybe 5 at the most, from a national title, maybe even 3. And in 2018, I'm not entirely sure. But they are a solid team. They've just played kind of warm up games, their first 3. But not to say AIC is a warm up game, because they upset St. Cloud, I think 2 years ago. I think it was St. Cloud. Is St. Cloud or Mankato? One of the two. But they have upset number 1 seeds, overall seeds in the NCAA tournament in recent years. So not to say that they're a scrub team. And then Michigan, Lake Superior State, they've had some solid teams. I have seen them play in Mankato when I've gone to a game. Not quite sure how Lake Superior is this year or not. My thoughts are it is going to be UMD and Mankato, and that's going to be a really, really entertaining game to watch for the championship. Could go either way, but my predictions is UMD, or my prediction is UMD and Mankato for the championship of the Icebreaker tournament. I do think all the games are going to be close, 2 goals at the max, with an empty netter thrown in here and there. But
the only thing on your prediction that I want to caution you on is U of M. This might be one of the most stacked teams we've seen on paper in college hockey in a long, long time. It's a team that I believe at least 5 players were drafted within it, not only in the first round, but like 4 of them were drafted within the first 5 picks or something like that. Like, it's stupid where these guys were ranked. And they all chose to play at least 1 year at Western, or at Michigan, I'm sorry.
You wish they were at Western.
Oh, don't you know it? I won't lie. Like, that, having a team that stacked would be incredible. But I do love my Broncos, and I'm extremely happy with the fact that our seniors decided to stay an extra year. So, but again, it's a team that expectations are going to be extraordinarily high for U of M this year. But at the same token, like, their fans have to know that these guys are not staying around long. Like, it's almost looking like Michigan is becoming the Kentucky if we were talking about basketball. Like, there's a lot of one and done players who wear the blue and maize. So that's the only like real caution I have for you, and I think Minnesota Duluth is a team that could potentially show some dents in that armor that is the Wolverine blue and maize. Personally, as more of a Bronco fan than a Wolverine fan, I wouldn't mind seeing some dents in that armor. And to get a good idea of what Western's going to be facing when they come to town and we go to Yost. But so that matchup that could be that could potentially be a look at an NCAA tournament matchup, and could in fact be one that is played in late March, early April for a title. Like that's the kind of caliber of teams that are in this tournament and are going to be playing each other.
Absolutely, it is a possible matchup. My argument would be a rebuttal is yes, you have the all the talent in the world on that team, but time and time again, hockey it's proven that it doesn't matter how many star-studded players you have if you don't have depth and that grit and those role players. I mean, look at Edmonton, just in general, what they've had over the years in the NHL recently. Unless you got Wayne Gretzky, it doesn't matter who you have on that team as far as top tier players. They can only play so much. You have to have that depth, and what um, UMD can expose is the the bottom lines in that third pairing, the bottom two lines in the third pairing of Michigan, because yeah, they are stacked, but UMD is deep and they have a lot of experience and they're not going to get rattled. So if you throw a young team against them, they're going to be like a deer in headlights and they're going to look, oh, they got so many guys that have been drafted by NHL teams. They're so good. A lot of these UMD players, they were still on national championship teams. It's they before the 2020 championship got canceled, they could have three-peated.
Yeah.
And they made it to the Frozen Four last year. It's a whole group of guys that have been there. They have the experience, and they're not phased by a lot of big names. They're like, oh, this is our system. We're gonna do this, and yeah, big names get people excited. People want to go watch Kentucky play basketball, but how many national championships do they have to show for it?
True.
It doesn't make a lick of difference in that sense.
I almost wish that this tournament had been Michigan versus Providence day one, Minnesota versus Minnesota State day one, and we could have got this day one matchup in the championship potentially, because it's gonna be a heavyweight contest. It's gonna be fun to watch.
Oh yeah, and well, all four of the teams, and Providence is probably the one that's a little bit out of their weight class, but they're light heavyweight versus heavyweight. They're not like a bantamweight trying to fight in heavyweight. They're right there. They know they built the program. They know where they stand. So it's. I think Mankato comes out of that because of how strong they are. I think UMD comes out probably a 1-goal win, possibly overtime, and then overtime Mankato UMD in the championship. And it's a little bit of homer in me, a little bit of Minnesota, but I think possibly overtime. It's a 1-goal game between UMD and Mankato. Mankato maybe pulls it out just because UMD, they come through it when it matters at the end of the year. Not quite beginning of the year, because this isn't going to make a difference in standings. It's more fun for the fans and just testing out other conferences.
Yeah, for sure. And then let's see who else. I think Miami's back in action. I think against, I want to say Michigan State. I just looked at this stupid thing.
I think so too, because when I was looking at this past weekend's scores, I think I saw they were playing Michigan State.
Can you make a real schedule and not just show me NCHC teams? I mean, granted, I do care when you play conference games, but golly.
The world doesn't revolve around U.S. Come on.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the rest of the people who would use the internet would also like it to be a little more helpful. Okay. Yeah, they're at Michigan State. They are starting the year off with a tour of the CCHA, which I guess Western kind of is too. because both Miami and Michigan State were once members of the CCHA before the Big Ten broke that apart.
Yeah, we don't. We the only CCHA opponent we have is Bemidji, and then we have. Well, I guess. Well, Michigan was part of the old CCHA before they went to the Big Ten.
Yep.
But that's for the icebreaker, and then we go to WCHA opponent with the Gophers as a home and home, and then it's Western weekend, and we are not going to be friends for that weekend.
We'll be friendly rivals. Yeah, we'll use the word friends still. I won't. I won't completely hate you. I might kick you off my Twitch channel though.
Frenemies.
Yeah. Let's see. Denver. Who do you play? Air Force. A home and home series with the Air Force.
I think that could be a decent series based off of what we think of Denver. Because Air Force beat CC in the exhibition, but
yeah. Air Force is one of those sneaky teams, and I think the same thing that happens in hockey that happens in football. You get the military academies, and you don't expect them to. I mean, they're not really on the same level as the public universities or the upper echelon, the SECs,
they're not
former Pac-12
sport,
right? And they have a very distinct way of playing. Like when you're playing Army, they're gonna run the ball at you and they don't care. Like that's what they're gonna do. When you play Air Force in hockey, they are going to run. They are going to outwork you. They are going to be conditioned beyond the conditioning of any team that will see the ice this year. And you can try and tell me otherwise, but I will disagree with you 12 ways to Sunday. Like you're not going to outcondition Air Force or Army or any of the military academies that have.
I was going to say, Army or Navy
team
might outcondition them. Those fans will tell you otherwise. Anybody who's graduated that they outcondition the other academies.
But that is a team that you have to stay on top of and score goals quick, score goals early, score goals often in order to beat those kinds of teams. Because if you let them, they will trap you against the wall, they will hold you there, they will tire you out, and they will score late.
Yeah, and even if you score early, if you don't score often, they are, like you just said, they're going to grind you down. They are not going to give up. That is not in their DNA. For anybody at any of the service academies, they are not going to give up. They don't care if they're down 4-0 at the end of the first. They think there is a chance to win, and they're going to fight you for it.
But that should be a pretty good matchup. And it's two teams that both play at elevation, so you're not going to get the elevation sickness or tiredness that I don't know how often it really affects some teams. I think they try and sell it as home ice advantage more than it actually does, but I'm sure every once in a while you'll catch somebody.
No, there's always somebody that it affects more than others. It's always different people affects differently.
And then Colorado College will be at Union College in Schenectady, New York. So
I think that should be
a bit of a trip.
I think that should be decent for them. I don't know how Union is. I know they were really good because Ferris and Union were both in the Frozen Four probably 8 or 9 years ago now. And time has kind of gotten away from me, but I know they're between the two of them. I think they maybe had one NHL draft pick between Ferris and Union.
That it's I won't lie, like since the NCHC has come onto the scene and they've become this dominating force, it has been hard to tell like when other conferences were good or when teams from other conferences are good, and then they step into an NCHC arena and it's not as close as their fans were hoping it was going to be.
Right. The only ones that you can pretty much guarantee are good consistently are BU and BC.
and UMass, they with Kale McCarr, they burst onto the scene, but they had been horrid before he went there.
See, who do we talk? We talked about UND has Bemidji. We covered that one pretty extensively.
Mm-hmm. DC, Denver.
Oh, St. Cloud. Who does St. Cloud play?
Yeah, I don't know who St. Cloud plays.
We need St. Cloud, and then we need to look for Nebraska Omaha still. St. Cloud has Minnesota. It looks like it is a home and home. Friday at Minnesota in Minneapolis, and
that is
St.
right.
Cloud will be home at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center on Saturday.
And that is Motzko versus his old team. And the Gophers, they've been, since Bob became the coach of Minnesota, they've picked it up. It was slow the first few years, but I wasn't surprised when they were fairly good last year because of the type of coach he is, and he was getting the type of players. Brett Larson, though, was in St. Cloud before he was at UMD. It's going to be a solid matchup. I think St. Cloud probably comes out at worst a split, if not a sweep. But I think they're going to be close games.
Yeah, for sure. I hate your state. I just want you to know that. With your names of cities and my lack of understanding of where crap is in that state. Because I constantly confuse St. Paul and St. Cloud. Because I was basically saying, like, these have to be, like, the two closest schools in the country as far as, like, that home and home series. Like, what are they going to do? Share hotels? But I don't think they're as close as my brain wants them to be. But
now, if it's St. Thomas and the Gophers, they are probably the two closest because St. Thomas is just on the other side of the Mississippi from the U and a little bit south. There's maybe 10 miles between them.
Okay. You come up with some better city names. UNO. I don't know if you've looked at their schedule, but they started their season with 5 straight home series.
Props to them for doing that.
I mean, it's good for the beginning of the year, but man, is that going to be rough in the second half of the year. It's going to be worse than last year was. I mean, actually, it's kind of close to what last year was, but
yeah,
because they had the pod in Omaha, and so every game was a home game. Well, home game for the month of December, but yeah, the entire month of October they are at home, and their off week is the 22nd, 23rd. Yeah, they opened against Lake Superior. They had Maine come in this last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
They have Alaska Fairbanks coming in this weekend.
Supposedly, because the Gophers, they had their series canceled. I don't remember if it was Anchorage or Fairbanks, but they had to have their series canceled last weekend. I think because of travel and COVID issues.
I don't know if Anchorage has a team at the moment.
I think they still do because they got they weren't going to, but then they brought it back. I think it's not quite the Robert Morris situation, but it was very close to being one.
Let's see. That's another. Those two schools are so hard to freaking remember.
I'll look it up quick.
I'm looking. No, that's Fairbanks. They do not have a schedule listed.
Oh, maybe they did. nix it for the year. Eh, not the first time and not the last time I've been wrong.
Oh, did I find it? Nope. Thought I did, but I did not. Yeah, I don't think they. That's unfortunate. And it's always sad when a program gets shut down. And then to wrap up October, they have Long Island,
The Sharks.
new Division One team. I think this is their second season, third
I
season,
believe it is their second year.
second or third.
I- yeah, second or third. I want to say second, but yeah, the LIU Sharks, and they have a really cool color scheme. I'm not gonna lie.
I do like it. It's a little bit different. Anchorage, or not Anchorage. We just talked about them. Fairbanks, former former CCHA school. When Western was in there, and that was always a weird trip. You'd either see them come all the way from Alaska, or know that Western was leaving on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday and spending a week in the Great North. Great show, by the way. I don't know if you watched that, but that is a fantastic show.
Yeah, I've even noticed with the NAHL with the Minnesota Magicians down here. They're with Kenai River and I want to say it's Anchorage, but there's another Alaska team, and they will go play them and spend like 2 weeks up there and play 2 series up in Alaska just because it's just a pain to go back and forth. And now they've added a third juniors team up there in the NAHL. Can't quite remember where it is. But it just is more trips up to Alaska and no sunlight in the winter for those players.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so rough. But I think with that, that'll bring us to an end of week 1.5 of the college hockey season. I hope you're ready to carry the load next week because Western doesn't play, and I will have a very busy weekend with family things.
As will I, but I'll be doing my squats.
So
you're a little bit much to carry.
Yeah, I am. I'm a big boy. But I'll check in here and there on some stats and recaps and look at what I can when I can. So, but other than that, it was a fun chat, and can't wait to really dive into the season and get some NCHC play underway because that's going to be some good hockey.
That is going to be the best part when we can talk about NCHC.
All right. Well, once again, thank you to anybody who happened to stumble upon this, as it's on the YouTubes. All the links, or at least how to find us, will be in the description below because I usually remember to put those in there. And that's what everybody does when they talk about descriptions. It's always in the description below. You know, typical YouTube thing in the description below.
Smack that like button.
Yeah, like and subscribe. I mean, if you want to, go for it. I don't care. Follow us on Twitter. Do whatever you want. You're adults, I hope, because even though it hasn't gone that way at the moment, this may be a more adult show later in the season when some frustrations come out. So, until next time, adios.
Have a good night.